Good evening. The papers are over here. We are just about to start. So we saw in the past few weeks, we saw that there are Chovot HaIvarim and Chovot HaLevavot, duties of the limbs and duties of the heart. And we saw that the mind has an essential role to play, especially in Chovot HaLevavot, duties of the heart. And we saw that it plays it in various ways, meaning there are various manifestations of Chovot HaLevavot. We discussed the awakening, the understanding, the feeling, the constant awareness, and the emotional identification, and other aspects of the inner world that obviously plays a very important role in Chovot HaLevavot, but we emphasize, especially in the first shiurim, the understanding. The understanding was a key to carry out Chovot HaLevavot, because without the understanding, we're not able to have an awareness, we're not able to have an emotional identification. All of these aspects depend on understanding. And therefore we say reason plays a key role when it comes to Chovot HaLevavot. Now, today, we are going to see that this dichotomy between Chovot HaLevavot and Chovot HaIvarim is not as strong as we thought it is. All these four shiurim were based on the great dichotomy, the difference between Chovot HaLevavot and Chovot HaIvarim. Today, we are going to see that, well, perhaps it's more that the line is more blurred than we think it is. After we do that, I'm going to take it back to the very first shiur where we started. And if you remember, then I spoke about the influence of our inner world on the outer world. And once we will blur the difference between Chovot HaIvarim and Chovot HaLevavot, the distinction will still be there, but not as strong as we first thought it to be. Then we will see that this understanding, something that we understood in a vague way at the very first shiur, the influence of our inner world on the outer world, will understand better how that actually works and why it is so important, as we stated already in the first shiur, to our situation here in Israel today. So already last shiur we mentioned another dichotomy that was tied to the dichotomy of Chovot HaIvarim and Chovot HaLevavot, and that was the sources for these Chovot. We said the source for Chovot HaIvarim is the Torah, because without the Torah, I wouldn't know about Chovot HaIvarim. But the sources for Chovot HaLevavot, we said, is the source for Chovot HaLevavot is reason. Now, the Torah might also inform me about Chovot HaLevavot, but the main source, we said, is reason, because without reason, we're not able to even understand it. And therefore, the source must be reason in order for us to be able to carry it out. And already last week, we saw the blurring of the line between those two. I don't know if you noticed it, because I said it derech hagav, and now I'm going to emphasize it. And that was when I mentioned the Torah, when we saw the source where Chovot HaLevavot discusses the Torah as sort of crutches for the mind. Meaning, he said, because the mind takes time to develop, we are not born fully reasonable creatures. Our intellect needs to develop over time. And what will happen then is that we will live our lives oblivious to our duties. And then all of a sudden, when we grow up, we will be informed about these duties, but our habits won't fit the duties, and it will be very difficult for us to carry them out. Therefore, tradition forms a community in which we grow, and the community informs us, our parents, our teachers, of these duties, even before we are able to understand them, we already turn them into habits. And by the time we grow up and we're able to understand them, then we don't have to fight habits, incorrect habits, which we developed over time. Not that we don't. Well, we know we do, but not as many as we would have if we wouldn't have grown in a traditional community. And therefore, that is one very important aspect of the Torah. But then he said it is even more important, not even more, it is additionally important even afterwards, because he says our mind alone, reason alone, is not strong enough to hold us to our duties and to be able to do what we need to do. So the Torah is there accompanying it by telling us other things. And I will explain what he means by that. What he means is that reason might tell us, listen here, there are certain things which are not good to do. But let's say reason will tell me it's not, I'm bringing this as an example. It might be true, it might not be true, it doesn't matter. But as an example that will help us understand. There is, the papers are here. The Torah might tell us, don't, not the Torah, reason might tell me it's not good to be gluttonous, to run after food all the time. Okay, but what do I do about it? I'm not too sure how. Yes, so I'll try harder. But the Torah gives me a whole range of hilchot kashrut that trains me in a way that makes me less inclined to jump on food whenever I see it. So that is an example where the Torah is also builds something where I'm able. Okay, we saw something else, and that is that we're not always so truthful with ourselves, and therefore our minds can play tricks on us, and our mind can tell us, well, reason dictates this, when it's actually somewhere our mind is telling us that is wants it for its own egoistic reasons, and doesn't inform us. Our subconscious doesn't inform us about it, but the Torah is something that is outside of us, and therefore it is able to give us the straight path. So we see that the strong dichotomy between reason on the one hand and Torah on the other hand is not as strong as we thought it is, because the Torah is there to guide our reason. Meaning, if our reason is way off the Torah, then we should ask ourselves some serious questions about the motivation of our reason. Why is it that it's there? And to try, so meaning it's sort of a matzpen that helps our reason. Okay. Now we also already know that there are Chovot HaEvarim that have a Chovot HaLevavot component. That we already know, and that is not going to surprise us today. For instance, we know that Chovot HaEvarim, like Tefillah, have a lev component. Have a Evarim component, meaning you get up, you say certain words, but they also have an Evarim component of having certain kavanot, of feeling that I'm standing before. I'm sorry. Levavot. Thank you. That I'm standing. I wanted to see if I'm concentrating. So we're standing before Hashem, right? Or Kriyat Shema, which is saying certain words, but there is a component of Chovot HaLevavot where we have to have a kavanah, kabbalat ol malchut shamayim, etc., etc. But today we're going to see something else. He's going to discuss what we understand as Chovot HaLevavot, but he's going to confuse us, and now we'll have to redefine what we mean when we say Chovot HaLevavot. So we saw last week the parts, the components, or the stages of Tshuva, and we saw that there are 4, and now he's going to discuss 5 conditions of each 4 of these stages. And these conditions are important because he says if these conditions are not fulfilled, then the tshuva is not going to be a successful tshuva. So it has to contain these conditions. We're not going to go through all the conditions. We're going to see some of them in order to perplex ourselves and then to re-understand what he says. So when he's discussing, let's look at source number 1. He's talking about Tna'ei HaCharata. So he said the first step in tshuva is regret. Now he says for regret to be a successful regret, what does it mean a successful regret? Well, what defines successful as opposed to not successful? So a successful regret meaning a regret that will turn into a full tshuva that will actually work. Okay, so in order for it to be successful, there are 5 conditions which he mentions, and we're not going to read all the conditions, but we're going to read some. So he's talking about לשנות מלבושיו ותכשיטיו, להראות סימני החרטה בדבריו ובמאכליו ובכל תנועותיו. הבכי והצעקה והאבל מתחרט על מה שקדם לו מן החטא. Just a minute. What's going on here? He's talking about duties of the heart, but he's not talking here about things that are in the heart. He's talking about actions, right? He's talking about changing one's clothes, jewelry, to show the signs of regret in speech and in food and in all actions, to cry, to weep, to mourn. These are actions. So what's going on here? He's referring to duties of the heart, but he is telling me that some of the conditions, not all, the other conditions are conditions that have to do with what's going on inside. But he's counting as some of these conditions things that I do. So actions. So what's going on here? And then he goes on, Na'ei bakashat mechila, when we ask for forgiveness there too. Sheit'aneh bayom ve'itpalel balayla, I must fast during the day and pray at night. שיטרח וישתדל להזהיר בני אדם מכמות עבירותיו ליראם מעונשם. Now, it's not enough that I only not do it myself, but that I go out and to show my sorriness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then I should go out and talk to people about how bad it is to do those things that I've done, right? Sometimes in a school when you want to teach children that smoking is bad or drugs are bad, so you bring an ex, right, someone who used to be an addict, and he speaks to them about it. So says the Chovot HaLevavot, this is not a new invention. This is, right, 1,000 years ago. Chovot HaLevavot tells us about it. This is part of what tshuva is, to tell other people about how terrible these things are and that they shouldn't do it. And that is one of the conditions of mechila, meaning if I ask Hashem for forgiveness and I don't go out there telling people, listen here, don't do these things, then my asking Hashem for forgiveness is not a real asking of forgiveness, something like that. But there's an action that if I feel really, really, really sorry inside and I express it in my heart to Hashem, then what's wrong with that? I'm fulfilling the duty of the heart. What is he doing here? What is he telling me about actions that I must do? Sorry?
It's not talking about specific how they roll it. It's talking about person's behavior.
Yes.
When you say these 5 conditions of regret, like, why is he telling us to change our ornaments and stage? It seems more of a behavior, like a person has a behavioral issue, and therefore do these things and your behavior will change.
You are right. You are now referring, but I think, to something else, and that is when we do tshuva. What tshuva from what? Is it a specific avera that we did? Meaning Hashem told us to not. I remember on Zayin Shvat this year, I ate basar v'chalav, and on that I'm doing tshuva. That is one type of tshuva, right? A person keeps a diary with all the averot that he did this year, and comes Yom Kippur, he opens it and he said, "Oh, terrible, terrible! I must do tshuva on this." That is one tshuva. The Rambam discusses it in the first perek of Hilchot Tshuva, that every mitzvah taseh, every mitzvah lo taseh, that I do and that I don't do, I must do tshuva from. And Chovot HaLevavot discusses that type of tshuva as well. And then there is another type of tshuva, or another element of tshuva, and that is not a specific avirah. That is the path that I'm on. I'm doing something wrong. I have some habit I want to fight. I have some mitzvah that regularly I don't care about it, and I want to make it better. So that is a different. So you're right that when we talk, I don't think only here, but generally when we talk about tshuva, then formally we speak about specific avirot, but as a process, we're talking about a life-changing event. And that he is also telling us, he says that one of the things that are moneh the tshuvot and the tshuva, therefore are also one of the conditions, is if I let's say I decide, this sin is really bad, I shouldn't do it anymore, but this sin is okay. This I could tolerate. Says that type of tshuva doesn't work. Tshuva needs to be a total change. Now, I could say that I could tell myself, listen here, I can't at once change everything, but I'm on a process of changing everything. But if I'm not on such a way, but I'm saying I want to change only part and part not, then that won't work. But that is something else altogether. But what bothers me here is not that he's talking about mitzvot or avirot that are duties of the limbs. On the contrary, he's talking about tshuva, which is a duty of the heart, tshuva in itself. But he is saying that as part of this duty of the heart, there are certain actions I must take. And that is what is perplexing me here. Okay? So maybe it's not as perplexing for you. Maybe yes? Okay.
He's linking these behaviors to regret, not necessarily specific sin, but if you really want to show you regret what you did, then change your clothes and don't let jewelry and don't eat. I mean, really show that you're feeling regret.
Right. But he's saying it's not if you really want to show, but it's sort of a condition. If you don't do it, it means that the regret is not true regret or something like that. It's almost like that.
It seems like it's trying to, going overboard by showing regret.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be so embarrassed to backslide, but he's trying to use your Yitzhar of backsliding to get you to be afraid to backslide, because then you'd be embarrassed in front of all those people who just finished telling them, whatever you do, don't do what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Do it.
Okay, that might be, but he doesn't tell us that is what it's for.
It's a nice theory to say you can split duties in half and duties of the. But we're one person. I am one person. I've got within me things, and I act because of those things, and my thoughts within me are caused by things that are around me and what I do. And I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not yet.
Yes.
Maybe I am, but
So I think you're absolutely right, and we'll see that he's actually going to say we'll see that he's going to say it. But it's important for me to say it in the way of a question and answer, because I want us to pay attention to this. That it's not. One might mistakenly say, and sometimes people say that what is important is what is in the heart. Mitzvot are not so important. Mitzvot of the limbs are not so important, because after all, they're outward, and it's not really. It doesn't reflect my true self. My true self is what happens inside, and that is what, right? Ani Yehudi tov balev, right? So the question, if I carry out the mitzvah, is not so important. So what the point that he's going to make is that, as you very well said right now, is that you can't really differentiate between differentiate between the two.
And isn't his point saying that it's not a cause and effect? In other words, it's not as if you say, well, if I change my clothes, if I change my jewelry, then that will therefore mean I will regret. But it's the other way around. This is if I truly regret, then of course.
Very good. Very good. I think you're on to something.
I truly regret.
Yes, you made a very good point. I'm not going to repeat it now because I'm going to say it in a minute.
Okay.
And when I'll say it, then I'll link it to you. I'll say that that's what you said. But what we are before we go there, I want to see source number 2, because in source number 2 he says something very interesting. He seems to contradict himself. He says, "Ve'ein tshuva nimnat al hachoteh, ela mitzad ro matzpuno ve'tarmit libo." He says the only thing that holds tshuva back, that is that when this is towards the end of Shiur HaTshuva, he wants to explain to us what's going on, what holds you back. So he says the only thing that holds you back is your heart, because if your heart was in the right place, then tshuva will work. It's only in the heart. And then a few lines later, ועוד, התשובה איננה יוצאת, כי אם ממעשינו לא מדברינו. Okay. Yeah, he says, tshuva is not about what we say, it's about what we do. And then he says 2 minutes after saying, the only thing that stops the sinner from tshuva is what's going on inside. So what's going on here? So I think you all know the answer already, but I wanna make it dramatic. So I'm showing how he seemingly contradicts himself here. But what he's saying, I think, is something very, very simple. But before we go to say what he says, and I think part of it is what you said, but even more, I want to tell a story. There's a famous Zen story about I forgot the name of the story, but it's depicted by 10 pictures, and one of them is the when a guy comes with the ox to the market, and the idea is that this is someone who went through a whole journey, and now he's coming with the ox to the market where originally he was, and now he does exactly the same things that he did before going out to the journey. And no one can tell the difference. But there's a big difference between each thing that he does now and things that he did before the journey. But you can't tell the difference, because if you would tell the difference, that means he's doing something wrong. That means he's arrogant, because he mustn't show. Showing the difference shows his own arrogance. So he mustn't show the difference. He must be involved in market life, meaning be like everyone else, do function in society in a good way, but in the same exact way that he did before he went the journey. But what is the difference? The difference is that now his mind, his heart, is in a totally different place. So he went through a whole journey to take him back to the same exact place where he started. And I think that in a way, in a sense, also Rabbeinu Bechaye takes us through a journey that takes us to the same place where we started. Meaning he started by telling us, listen here, you're doing Chovot HaLevavot, not enough. Chovot HaLevavot, not good. You need to focus on other things. Then he takes us through a journey, and at the end of the journey, he tells us, Chovot HaLevavot, that's the important thing. Meaning, Chovot HaLevavot, before we went through the journey, and we didn't have Chovot HaLevavot with us, then they were really nothing. But now that we went through everything and we understand the lev and we bring it with us, now Chovot HaLevavot have a totally different, a totally new quality, and they're of a very different nature. And in two ways, as you said before, but before that, not before that, together with it. At the end of last week, we had the exercise, which I really liked this week's exercise, and I really hope that as many of us did that exercise, even I carried it out myself, and I וראיתי ישועות. It's a סגולה בדוקה נוראה, בדוקה ומנוסה, that it changes. What was it? I asked to find a discrepancy in our life between what we believe we should be doing and what we actually do, and to have an internal discussion with ourselves about it. But I insisted that that discussion take place in writing. Why in writing? Because if it only takes place in our mind is a very is a wonderful person. It's almost like AI, right? It covers its tracks, right? So it says something, and then we might answer it, and then it says, oh, no, I didn't really say what I said. I said something else. I said this. And then we believe it, that that's what it says, and not something that it said before. But if we write it down, then our mind is able to play less tricks on us. We write down our question to the mind, and then we write down its answer, and then we look at it and we say, really? No. And we ask the next, and we have this conversation with ourselves, and we see that we have all these, and all of a sudden it gives us clarity. It gives clarity to our thoughts. So what happened here is that I took something out of the Reshut HaRabim of my, out of the Reshut HaYachid of my mind, and I put it sort of in Reshut HaRabim. It's not exactly Reshut HaRabim, it's only me, but I could show it to others, but in a place where I objectified what's going on inside, and now I'm no longer able to play tricks on myself because here it is. It's on paper. That is the one aspect. But then there is the other aspect. So meaning the one aspect is that these help our mind strengthen what's going on inside. What is going on? Do you remember when he said last week that our sechel is very weak? It's not from here. One of the weaknesses of our mind is that it's abstract. It's not concrete. So sometimes we want to give it something concrete, and some Chovot HaLevavot will support that. And then there is another sense, and that is what you said before. That is that the Chovot HaEvarim are an expression of Chovot HaLevavot, meaning when Chovot HaLevavot are of the right degree, then they're bound to express themselves through the Ivarim. Meaning, when I'm happy, I'll smile. I'm looking like this. I'm probably not happy now, right? I'm probably a bit upset. When I'm this, then I'm probably happy, right? I'm probably excited. You could see the state of a person is, if the lev is strong enough, it is bound to show okay. Maybe, I mean, it depends on culture. It depends on culture. It's not so, but to a degree, it is so. So these two aspects of the connection between Chovot HaLevavot and Chovot HaEvarim is very important. Chovot HaLevavot and Chovot HaEvarim are intertwined, both in the sense that Chovot HaEvarim are a reflection or an expression of what's going on in the lev, and they also enhance what's going on in the lev. And these two things are very important. And this is what he is actually saying, that what actually holds up the tshuva is really what is going on in my heart. But what is going on but how do I truly know what's going on in my heart? Not by telling myself what my heart is saying, because my heart can lie. By my behavior. My behavior is the best indication to me as well of what's happening in my heart. And that is what he says, meaning, yes, tshuva is in the heart, true. But how do I know what's in the heart? I could tell myself stories about what's in my heart, or I could really know what's in my heart if I examine my deeds. So these both things are very important.
So, question, as an example,
yes.
Chazal tell us the facts. Why?
Mm-hmm.
like what he said is significant. It's almost I won't say revolutionary. For me, it's like an eye opener first time.
Yes.
Chazal tell us to fast, to do tshuva.
So
to get us to find tshuva. What Chovot HaLevavot is saying is that when a person regrets, he feels like he needs to fast. Meaning fasting is part of his modus operandi in order to become better.
Yes. Yes. I don't want to get stuck in one example, but what you're asking is, what is this nature like? How exactly is this connection done between deeds and heart? I'll give an example from Hilchot Avilut. I'll give it as a quick example. The Ramban talks about two types of Avilut that Chazal talk about: Avilut Chadasha and Avilut Yeshana. Avilut Chadasha is the ordinary Avilut that we know. A person experienced a death of a relative and is broken and is in a state of mourning. That is Avilut Chadasha. And then Avilut Yeshana is when we express mourning over something that happened a long, long time ago, not to us, but to our ancestors. For instance, that is the one example that we have. Churban Beit HaMikdash, on Tisha B'Av, we mourn. We mourn for what? For something that happened a long time ago. The Raman says it's very different in nature. The halachot are very similar in both these aveluyot, but for different purposes. Because in Avilut Chadasha, the halacha is an expression of our feeling, meaning we feel mourning, and the halacha comes to tell us, do these deeds as an expression of the mourning. On Tisha B'Av, it's very difficult to be sad for something that happened 2,000 years ago and that we don't understand exactly its bearing on our life. But the halacha tells us to act as if we are mourning, and says the Ramban, that awakens us to mourning. So here we have deeds that are not an expression of our state of mind, but are supposed to be a trigger or a trigger to a state of mind. So I think the Chovot HaLevavot is speaking about both. Yes, about both these aspects of the connection between deed and state of mind. So our actions are both an expression and a trigger to our state of mind and to our state of mind. Okay, connecting it back to the story, to the Zen story, the person who comes back with the ox. If you will, this whole thing about starting in one sense and then going through a journey, coming back to the same place, that is tshuva at the end of the day, right? We opened in one place as sinners, and then we make a whole masa, and we come back and we are in the same place. We are still sinners. We didn't do anything else, right? Nothing outward yet changed, at least not something that we're able to do to see, but yet it changed everything. What did it change? So in a place, so the Chovot HaLevavot quotes Chazal that talk about that b'makom shebalei tshuva omdim tzadikim gmurim einam yecholim la'amod. So he's not such a romantic. He doesn't think that is always the case, but he says there are different aspects to tshuva. In some aspects, tshuva is like that. In some, it's not. He says, for instance, if someone murdered someone, then it's very difficult to say that where he stands, a tzaddik amur that never murdered doesn't stand. He murdered someone. He did the most terrible thing we could ever think about, and that will never be fixed. The magic is that even he could do tshuva, but to say that he's better than someone who never murdered, that's already a stretch. But in some aspects, the choteh does stand in a higher place. In what sense? So he brings one example, but we could think of other examples. He talks about the humility that a choteh has that a tzaddik will never have. Yesh min hashavim, in source number 4, sheishtaveh achar hatshuva im hatzadik asher lo chata, umehem, I'm sorry? Oh, did I say? Yes, source number 3, sorry. Umehem mi sheyesh lo yitron al hatzadik, היה חטאו סיבה לכניעתו והשתדלותו לפרוע חובות הבורא, וזה חטא שמועיל לשווא יותר מכל צדקות הצדיק. במקומם שבעלי תשובה עומדים אין צדיקים גמורים יכולים לעמוד. Meaning the humility that it gives, the broken heart that a righteous, that a Baal Tshuva has, is something that someone who never experienced it will never have. We could think of other aspects that really that journey of sin and tshuva really brings a sense of understanding and an inner world which is even richer than the original tzaddik. In fact, already at the Hakdama, he says all what we said, and this is in source 4. He says, כבר נתברר לנו כי אדם מחובר מנפש וגוף, ושניהם מטובות הבורא עלינו. האחד נראה והשני אינו נראה. Okay, so the body we can see, the spirit we cannot see, but they're both aspects of who we are, ואנחנו חייבים לעבוד אותו בעבור זה עבודה גלויה ועבודה צפונה, and therefore we have to serve Hashem both outward and inward, because those are the two parts of us, as Phil said before. וידעתי דעת ברורה כי חובות האיברים לא תשלמנה כי אם ברצון הלב וחפץ הנפש לעשותם. So that we know already, said already, that חובות האיברים without the component of the lev are not really there. וצריך שתדע כי הכוונה והתועלת במצוות הלבבות הם שיהיו גילויינו וצפוננו שווים עד שתהיה עדות הלב והלשון והאיברים שווה. So he says what we need to get to is to an equilibrium where both the Chovot HaIvarim and Chovot HaLevavot are equal, meaning it is not that we leave the one and we say only that the other is important, but in fact they're tied together, as we said, and therefore they must be together. Oh, terrible. The part that I really wanted, I cut out the important part that I really wanted in here, where he says more than equal. Okay, where he says they actually feed one another. Okay, he actually says it. But the Rambam, the famous Rambam in source number 5, where he says that the vidui has to be said in one's lips, this is the Rambam probably has from Chovot HaLevavot, right? Where he says, שיעזוב החותך אתו ויסירנו ממחשבתו, that is what tshuva is. And then he says, וצריך להתוודות בשפתיו ולומר עניינות אלו שגמר בליבו. This halacha, that tshuva has to be outwards, that it has to be something that he says, is clearly something that the Rambam takes from here. The Rambam talks about there he says if one only does vidui without true tshuva, inward tshuva, that is like a tovel v'sheretz beyado. It's like going to the mikvah when I'm still holding the source of tum'ah. If I'm going to the mikvah with the wrong thoughts, meaning I'm saying I'm sorry, but I don't really mean it, then I'm still holding the sheret. But the other way around is also true, where I think I threw the sherets, but I don't say it, then I'm not going to the mikvah. Then I also it's not strong enough to hold for a very long time. So I need both these aspects in order to really do tshuva, to have tshuva work. So to recap what we saw and then bring it to our days today, we saw that when we spoke about Chovot HaLevavot and Chovot HaIvarim, these are not two separate things altogether. There are two aspects of the same thing, and that is of being better people. And as we have both guf v'nefesh, it's the making of us. And when we make resolutions, if they are true, they're bound to be expressed by deeds. And if we want them to stand, then we have to accompany them with deeds to make those resolutions strong. And both these aspects are true, and both of them feed off one another. And therefore, true tshuva obviously has has both these components. If you remember, we opened these shiurim when discussing the situation in the land of Israel, in the state of Israel, of of the political discourse and of the way we treat each other. And I said that obviously we're talking about the world of politics, which is the world of deeds, but no doubt it is mushpa, it is influenced by what is happening in our hearts. And I think it is easy now to understand that yes, the hearts are important, not only because it's the main thing, but also if we are interested in a proper world out there, if our inner world is metukan, then that also influenced our outer world, and vice versa. And B'ezrat Hashem, they will strengthen one another. Any questions? Or yes.
The Master's Parsha says,
Very good, very good. So really, when he talks about the when at the opening of Chovot HaLevavot, he speaks about really the peh and the lev and the maasim, like sort of the peh is somewhere in between the lev and the maasim, and that is something maybe for the next series of shiurim. I want to conclude with the following. We're standing before Yom Kippur. A few days it's Yom Kippur, was Rosh Hashanah a few days ago. We're saying slichot all the time. Slichot are one component of the 4 components of Tshuva. And obviously, if we are expressing our sorrow and asking Hashem for forgiveness, then we probably recognize the chet, we regret it, we leave it, we think about what we are going to do. But I think, at least I feel, that this year, after learning Chovot HaLevavot, I'm in a much better place where I'm able to really approach Tshuva not just as an idea or as something that I have faith that Hashem said that if we do Tshuva, Hashem is going to listen to us, but as an actual plan, an actual working plan, where I know that if I do certain things, I'm able to truly change myself. Now, I'm going to take Chovot HaLevavot for what he says, and since he says everything is based on, in Chovot HaLevavot, we are able to base ourselves on reason and not tradition alone, although tradition helps us and guides our reason, then it could be that there are some places where we understand part of these of the mechanism of tshuva differently, because we today modern psychology helps us understand the human mind in a certain way. I wouldn't take modern psychology al kirbo al and throw away tradition altogether, but perhaps together we are able to, each one of us, to build a reasonable understanding of ourselves, and through that understanding of ourselves to build a true roadmap to tshuva, a roadmap that will be not just, "Ooh, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Hashem, please forgive me. Why is it that every year I do the same thing and now I stand here exactly where I did last year, but I really regret. Why is it that it's not working? We're told that tshuva works. How is it that it doesn't work?" Well, it works if we carry it out as a plan. And I think that is the big chidush of Chovot HaLevavot when it comes to tshuva. It says, approach it as a working plan, meaning have a working plan and decide how you are going to do it. You know yourself, try and understand the inner world of yourself, the outer world, what causes you to do these things, and take the steps that will make you not do it, while treating ourselves both, taking care of our Chovot HaLevavot, but understanding that our outer expression, are also connected to these Chovot HaLevavot. So Be'ezrat Hashem, I hope we will all be able to do Tshuva Shlema this Yom Kippur. And I want to end with one other thing that is not directly kashur to the shiur, but I think it is important. I don't know about you, but I enjoyed this series very much. And I think there is something here that worked, that it was a short series of 5 shiurim on one topic, and we were able to come every week. And at the end, I don't know about you, but I feel that I really learned something in these 5 shiurim. Not only learned, but actually I really feel I was on a journey here. And I hope that we'll be able to repeat it in other ways during the year, have different short series on different things. It could be that we could, it could be a book, it could be a topic, and Be'ezrat Hashem. So I'll Be'ezrat Hashem publicize the next thing immediately after Sukkot, so we could start our next topic. Gmar Chatima Tova.